Hello and welcome to another standard video here in the Foundations metagame. Today we're checking out Red-Black or Rakdos Sacrifice, a deck using quite a few Foundations cards, including Alicia, who laughs at fate, a 3-mana 2/2 legendary creature with first strike, and whenever Alicia attacks we can put a +1/+1 counter on it, and it also has a raid, saying at the beginning of our end step, if we've attacked this turn, we get to return a creature card with mana value less than or equal to Alicia's power from our graveyard to the battlefield. So the same turn we cast Alicia, we can often get immediate value by getting back a 1 or 2 drop, and then once Alicia starts attacking, we can potentially get back 3 drops like Braids as well. And then we also have the Seer Slicer Goblin, another card with a raid mechanic, this time generating a 1/1 Goblin token end of turn if we've attacked. And then we've got the Fear of Missing Out as kind of the perfect enabler in this strategy. As a 2/3, when it enters we can discard and draw. It's also an enchantment creature, so it has multiple types for Delirium, and it cares about Delirium himself. If we have 4 or more types, when we attack, we'll get an additional attack step, and we get to untap a creature, so also very synergistic with Alicia, as we can maybe attack a second time and get a second +1/+1 counter. And then the Fear of Missing Out is also great with Urabrask's Forge. If we get an additional attack step, we get an additional Forge trigger, so we can get multiple tokens to attack the opponent with, and then the leftover tokens are also good sacrifice fodder for some of our sacrifice synergies, and it's also a way to reliably enable raid for some of our raid cards like the Goblin and Alicia. And then the Forge is also perfect for setting up Braids, as we can sacrifice the token end of turn, and then unless the opponent sacrifices a creature, we'll get to draw a card, and the opponent still loses 2 life. And then there's plenty of other tokens we can sack to Braids. We've also got some enchantments and artifacts we could sack to it. And then the Hex Mage at 1 mana is another example, as we can put the Cursed Roll token on one of our creatures. Sometimes we're fine putting it on a 1/1, so it doesn't really affect us, but sometimes we play the Hex Mage on turn 1, and then later we'll sacrifice the Cursed Roll token to an effect and have a 3/2 creature left over. The Percussionist, an artifact creature, so another type for Delirium as well. 1/1 with haste. When it dies, we get to exile the top card of our library, and we may play it until the end of our next turn, so it can also provide a bit of card advantage, and another good raid enabler. And then we've got more sacrifice effects with Disturbing Mirth. When it enters, we can sack a creature or enchantment. If we do, draw 2, and when we sack the Mirth itself to maybe a future copy or another sacrifice effect, we also get to manifest Dread, so that will result in a 2/2 and maybe additional cards in the graveyard for our various synergies. And then we've got a bit of a removal to round things out. Final Vengeance needs an enchantment or creature to be sacrificed to exile target creature, so it's quite efficient for just 1 mana, and we usually have enough things to sacrifice to it, and sometimes actively want to do so with cards like the Hex Mage. And then a Torch Tower is kind of the same at instant speed, can deal 2 damage regardless. If we sack something to bargain, can deal 3 and scry 1 as well, exiling the creature in the process, also very useful in today's standard metagame. And then at 2 mana, I've got a few more copies of Nowhere to Run, very good against the various aura strategies that rely on ward and hexproof tricks, giving a creature -3/-3 until end of turn. It's also quite good against the red decks, where it can take out a Screaming Nemesis without needing to take damage from it, and also a good answer to a Heartfire Hero, for instance. And then the mana base also gets to play with the Restless Vents as a creature land that lets us discard and draw, and then plenty more dual lands, including the Verge land, which not every 2-color pair has access to. So yeah, that's our deck. Now let's jump in some games and see how the deck does. Okay, we're on the play. Our hand is missing some cheaper creatures to synergize with Alicia, but we can Nowhere to Run, and then Vengeance sacks our enchantments to take out something else. Yeah, I'll still try it, but really hoping to find some 1 or 2 mana creatures in the meantime. Alright, Fear of Missing Out is perfect. And then could ditch a Vengeance, could ditch an Alicia. I guess black-green is more likely to have removal for Alicia, so we might want a second copy. Alright, so we'll attack. And then I'm sure Alicia eats a Go for the Throat end of turn. It sure does. Would prefer it if the opponent deploys some threats we can remove now, but the Annex is just more card draw. Disturbing Mirth, not the best at the moment. Could sack the Fear of Missing Out to it, but I think we're still probably better off playing another Alicia. And then next turn I can maybe make the play of sacking the Fear and immediately getting it back. Hoping our opponent plays a creature now. But nope, another Go for the Throat. So Alicia didn't do much. As we draw third copy. Alright, get in for 2. And a Shieldred's Edict. Our opponents waited a second too long here to fire it off, since now we enabled Raid. So when facing the Rakdos deck, make sure to use removal before attackers are declared. And then what to get rid of now. Torture Tower is good against Slasher, which they might be playing. Definitely need to keep the Vengeance. So between Nowhere to Run and Disturbing Mirth, I guess we keep Disturbing Mirth, since we could sack the Fear once again and get it back. Are we finally making a demon? We are. So we get to use Final Vengeance now. Or we could still attack, and then Torture Tower with Alicia can finish off a 6/6, sacking probably the Fear of Missing Out then. So I may start with Disturbing Mirth, sack the Fear. Then it's maybe a little bit less suspicious if we attack, since I just want to get the Fear back. And if they take it, which is also somewhat likely, we can still Vengeance second main. But yeah, I think this lines up better. So we can keep Vengeance for later. And then, do we need a Percussionist in the graveyard? Yeah, I guess Artifact as an extra type is helpful. We already have land, I believe. I guess we don't. Alright, in that case, maybe Percussionists, although it is an extra creature for Alicia. Yeah, I think it makes sense to put Percussionist in the graveyard still. And then do we want to top deck another one? Not particularly. Give me more removal, or maybe more threats. Alright, so now Delirium is enabled. Frillback isn't bad. They've got 3 decent modes: exiling our graveyard, destroying our enchantments, and gaining life. Opponent ends up destroying Fear of Missing Out and exiling our graveyard. Okay, so this turn we can play the Fear, discarding Goblin to get it back, although then I don't get to make a 1/1 token, so might still prefer discarding a land to it. And then attack with just Alicia. Play Goblin and attack land. And now we get our 1/1. So we basically traded a land for a 1/1 token, which I think is reasonable in this spot. And Dread Knight also good to exile with the Vengeance. Sadly, Duress is gonna take it away. That's too bad. I guess we should have used it while we had the chance. And a pair of Dread Knights. Opponent is still losing life. Our draw's not the best. So Alicia could attack, and they wouldn't be able to trade for it. So then I guess we also attack with Fear of Missing Out just to get it back. I don't think attacking all out is worth it, since they have some decent blocks. Although we're getting close, so they would chump Alicia, eat my Fear of Missing Out or Face Down card, maybe eat a token, take 2. Yeah, I mean, it's close. Or I can just attack with these 2, and then we'll get the Fear back, and get to draw, make another token, and the Dread Knight probably chumping Alicia. Yeah, I'll try this. can play the Percussionist next turn and maybe go for an all-out attack. Alright, Bloodletter will now start gaining them life. And another Annex, that's a problem. That's a lot of damage coming our way as well. Torch the tower. So we have sorcery, a land, can add instant and artifact to the list potentially, if we want to enable Delirium, and then hope to find something else useful with Percussionist, and then just exile, at this point, the Dread Knights. Found a forge, that's useful, and a torch on top. I mean, we're probably dead to the Bloodletter next turn anyway, so I don't think this matters. So I can now play the forge. Fear of missing out gives us an extra forge trigger as well. Untap Alicia. So we might be doing it, it's gonna be close. But yeah, they have to chump Alicia, block a goblin, and then with her additional attack, we should get there. So it all came down to this last sequence, top decking the forge, sacking the Percussionist to get Delirium again, and there we have it, awesome, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw with a functional hand. Got a Percussionist, Fear of Missing Out, some removals, some card draw. And we'll have lots of types for Delirium. Opponent on what could be mono-red or maybe red-black lizards. So I don't have a great attack here. And another Hired Claw, so those get to trigger right away. If I play Fear of Missing Out, I could still maybe block next turn, since they can at most pump up to a 2-3, and then if we double block, I can even trade, so I think that's fine. Possible our opponent has a burn spell in hand. A pump spell is potentially worse for us. Now that we drew the Hex Mage, I can sack the roll to Disturbing Mirth. And Shock just goes face. If they play a Screaming Nemesis, we probably need to Vengeance it, as opposed to losing my entire board. So if our opponent, let's say, has a Lightning Strike, then single block is better, because otherwise we lose both creatures. But yeah, if their plan is just to pump, then we may as well double block. If they have a Monstrous Rage, then double blocking's also fine. So I think we'll double block. Alright, they had the Lightning Strike, so that was the worst case scenario. But I think the other outcomes were more likely. Alicia, we would like to enable. So this turn I could stick to the plan, go Hex Mage plus Disturbing Mirth, or Hex Mage and then Final Vengeance, get rid of a Hired Claw. Problem there is that we don't have an answer left to a Screaming Nemesis, which they could still have in hand since they missed a land drop. So yeah, I'll stick to this plan. And then a Hex Mage could trade for a Hired Claw. So if I block, we kind of force them to pump. Again, we can trade for Monstrous Rage. Even though I would love to have the Hex Mage to enable Raid, I do need to mitigate some of the damage here. Alright, opponent Monstrous Rages the other Hired Claw, lets this one go, and plays a Heartfire. Alright, so now we could maybe attack and set up Alicia. Final Vengeance, sack Disturbing Mirth, and then Hired Claw is probably the bigger priority, even though exiling the Heartfire means they don't get to deal any damage with it. So it is kind of an interesting spot. We would get back Fear of Missing Out. And then we could set up a pretty good double block on the Hard Claw. So maybe Heartfire Hero is still the scarier of the two. I guess we could also attack, see if they want to chump, for starters. And this one, I'll let instant go to the graveyard. Get back our Fear. And find a Torture Tower. Alright, so we've got some decent tools in hand now. Screaming Nemesis would still be bad news. Opponent's got a Manifold Mouse. Another reason to prioritize the mouse last turn. And then Hard Claw doesn't have a great attack. Still good for 1 damage. Alright, so this turn I can potentially consider Urbrask's Forge as well, since we get to trigger it twice with Fear of Missing Out. And go to attackers. If we attack like so, can untap Alicia, and then Alicia could attack again potentially. Could also Torture Tower before blockers just to get rid of Hard Claw, maybe that made more sense. Alright. So, yeah, may as well sack this now. With Bargain. And Braid seems fine. And then Forge triggers again. Attack again. And is 1/2/2 on defense enough? If they have a Monstrous Rage left, then this would go up to 4 power, double strike, so then we're dead. So maybe I need to leave Alicia back now. But this seems okay. I've got a decent block on a hasty creature as well. And then next turn we should be able to close it out. Third land, there's a Nemesis as we suspected. But yeah, opponent's forced to hang back. And then now have to be careful if we attack with Alicia, since that's 4 damage coming our way. And with First Strike they can also finish off one of my creatures before regular damage. But I think if we just smash here, we should get there, since we get to trigger Forge twice again. And then Fear untaps Alicia. I guess if they block a 2/3 with a Nemesis, they get to deal 2 damage. And then potentially more with First Strike. But then they would also take lethal in the meantime, so that doesn't work. So Nemesis chumps Alicia, can redirect 4 damage to something. But yeah, opponent's just too far behind, plus we had more follow-up. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw. Hand is functional. Could sack Percussionist to a Disturbing Mirth. Facing red-white, so we probably need some removal if this is the Aura deck. If it's control, then this hand's fine. And yeah, opponent's passing, so we might get to deploy our Forge. For now, attack, play a Fear, discarding, could be a land or another Percussionist. I think I do want to keep hitting my land drops. And this a Lightning Helix. Although then again, Disturbing Mirth can sack a Percussionist. Although next turn we're kind of committed to Forge, and then we can sack the token to Disturbing Mirth. So close call here, but I'll keep the lands, and then now we can 3-drop, and then turn 4 double 2-drop. There's a talent. But we're the first ones with Urabrask's Forge. Although our opponent could just do the same next turn. Not too many answers for artifacts in the red-white deck, unless they're main decking a Braid or Brotherhood's End. So Carrot Cake can draw them 2 cards total if they sack it in my turn. And then, yeah, we'll just go to attackers. Fine to trade the Percussionist as well. Do need to kind of measure our threats in the face of Sunfall, but that's also why the Forge is so important in this matchup. Found Alicia, so that could get back our fear of missing out. Or we can stick to the plan of double 2-drop. I think I like the Alicia plan. Get back fear. Now a land can go. So they might already be incentivized to Sunfall me. Yep. And then we're just gonna attack. Play Mirth first. And see if we find something better than a Goblin. Braids. I think that counts. Can sack the Mirth, and then I don't think our opponent's giving up the Caretaker's Talent. And we get to Manifest Dread. Another Forge is excellent. Here we already have enchantment and land in the graveyard, so this doesn't matter. Helix Braids. We're just trying to buy time to get the Forges going. If our opponent eventually makes some large tokens, we could be in trouble too. If they level up the talent all the way. For now, another Carrot Cake. So yeah, they've gained a lot of life already. 12 once they sack the cake. And they're not lacking card draw. So far we've been able to keep up, but our hand is slowly starting to run out of steam, whereas the opponent is unlikely to have the same happen to them. So play Forge, attack. If they animate the Incubator, we can finish it off. And that's what they'll try, so before blockers and nowhere to run. And they also didn't get to draw a card this way, so that kind of worked out. Opponent's already jumping or 2-2. So they might be getting a little desperate. Because they also haven't leveled up talent yet, so they could have maybe copied a token with it. Opponent finally finds their own Forge, but it's got a lot of catching up to do. And it's not the best defensive card. So opponent planning to sack the Carrot Cake. Never mind, Lightning Helix the 5-1, so they don't get to draw. And then still play Goblin. Another Sunfall would be a little painful. I could Vengeance exile this, sacking the Percussionist just to get an extra card. I don't actually hate that. Because that way we at least get a card out of the Percussionists. And that way their Incubator is also smaller. Final Vengeance I'm not going to be using. Opponent's got another talent. Now they can level up and get a copy of the Phyrexian token. So that might be their plan. So we'll be able to Vengeance one of them at least. So, actually don't hate blocking, so they can't make that play. So they're back on the Carrot Cake plan, it seems. I think we just go all out. If they Carrot Cake up to 14, block Goblin, then they're taking 11. And then next turn we should get them. So I don't think it matters. But they might just remove the 6-1, and then we would be missing out on 2 damage. Alright, Torch the Tower, I guess, means they can still do both. So, we'll see. Yeah, I mean, our opponent's definitely hanging in there, and the late game favors them with all the card draw from talent. Just gotta hope to get it over with quickly, while we still control the larger forge. And, I don't think there's a huge upside to keeping a land in hand, but it's not like our opponent's gonna be playing Beza and drawing cards with it. And currently, yeah, I guess they would still get a treasure out of it. So the opponent's plan is to take us out as quickly as possible by leveling up the talent. Oof. I didn't mention this card earlier when discussing answers to Orbrask Forge, because this is kind of the nightmare scenario. You don't see Season of the Burrow very often, but here it's just incredibly deadly. Exiling both forges. And yeah, now the game's pretty much over. Well, we got close. Our opponent has gained close to 20 life this game, but couldn't quite get there in time. So Mirth, sack, nowhere to run, draw 2. But yeah, I think it's too late now. Play the Fear, discard land. And yeah, that's all we've got. Alright, GG's. And there's a Sunfall. And draw 2 more. And then shouldn't take them too long to close out the game here. Copy the Forge token, second main. Opponent still has 30 cards left, so it's not like they're gonna end up decking. So yeah, I think this matchup still definitely favors the red-white deck. We just got lucky to start out with double Forge. But cards like Sunfall are pretty good against a deck that relies on creatures and graveyard synergy. So yeah, I think we're just dead here. I'll show them that we're empty-handed, but they should be able to figure out a win next turn by leveling up the talents and animating the Incubator, the Mondrak as well. So our opponent's definitely got a greedier build of the Boros deck. And there we have it. GG's. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw. No 1-drops, no interaction, but a good amount of synergy still. So we'll give it a shot. Opponent also red-black, and a Duress can take either Mirth or Forge. I imagine it's Forge. That's harder for these types of decks to interact with. Alright, Hexmage was a good draw, and also sets up our turn 2 Disturbing Mirth nicely. Opponent does keep up some mana. So in that case, I don't think we Mirth, because if they remove Hexmage, it doesn't do anything. So instead we can attack. And then if they remove it before I get a chance to attack, it means no raid has been enabled, so we'll play the Fear. And then maybe ditch the Goblin, so Alicia can get it back next turn. Alright, so good amount of disruption early. But hopefully we get an attack in here. And a Maze Mind Tome says our opponent's more of a control deck. Could be a Demonic Pact deck as well. In which case, if they give it to us, we could maybe even sack it to our own Disturbing Mirth, if they're not careful. So Fear attacks. Alicia gets back Seer Slicer. Although the Goblin's ability is not going to trigger, since the window has already passed. I think I still like it here. Could also get back Hexmage, which sets up Mirth a bit better, although I'm likely gonna play Braids. And there's a Demonic Pact, so yeah, if our opponent times it to where we lose the game right away, that would be bad. Otherwise, we have ample opportunities to sacrifice it. So this turn, is there any way I can enable Delirium? We have Artifact, Creature, could add Enchantment and Sorcery technically, although that involves using Vengeance on my own stuff, which doesn't feel great. Yeah, I'll just keep it simple, play Braids, and then end of turn we can maybe sacrifice the Goblin token to Braid's ability if we resolve the raid trigger first. And then I'll sack the Goblin token. Find another Vengeance. Opponent's drawing. They're at 9. Do they have a sweeper? A Malicious Eclipse, pretty good. Luckily some of our creatures survive. And our opponent explodes. Yeah, I guess they're just dead on board here. Awesome, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw with a keepable hand. Percussionist can enable the raid on our Goblin to make a token. Forge also quite good at enabling raid turn after turn. We'll have to take probably 2 damage total here to curve Percussionist into Seer Slicer. Since the Verge only makes black initially. And a Duress, sadly, can take away our Forge, which is usually very good against black control decks. So next up, still playing the Seer Slicer. And then next turn we can maybe sacrifice to draw. Founding, so opponents maybe milling themselves. Chart, of course, could be kind of a blue-black version of the Oculus deck, since there's a black sorcery that returns a creature on the cheap if its mana value is 3 or less. Or they could be going bigger with some more expensive creatures to reanimate. For now, getting rid of a Harvester. So that would be bad if it comes back. For now, we can attack. Maybe just sack a Goblin token as opposed to the Percussionist in case we need it for artifact synergy. And then we've got another Disturbing Mirth, which can maybe sack the first one. Opponent with the Overlord to draw and discard. And there's Atraxa, so that's what they're maybe trying to reanimate. Alicia's a good draw, even though we don't have anything to get back at the moment. Could maybe sack the Percussionist to set that up. Or we might manifest Dread a creature into the graveyard. But yeah, for now we'll attack. And another Disturbing Mirth. And then I guess we'll select the Hex Mage, which can maybe turn face up into a 3/2 at some points. Yeah, I mean, we could Disturbing Mirth again, just to add more threats to the board, even though we're not necessarily setting up Alicia that way. We might mill another creature here. And sadly, don't get to put a Forge in hand. But yeah, double Fear of Missing Out, also pretty strong. So the cards are flowing at least. And the Fear will potentially survive the -2 from a Harvester. Don't mind it if our opponent gets back a Duress. Opponent goes for Chart a Course instead. So they're digging for a Sweeper maybe, or I guess they had to exile something, so they're not going to cast a Chart a Course. Another Founding. And a Virtue Persistence can take out a creature and gain 2. Goes for the first one, which was our Hex Mage, so now we can maybe get it back with Alicia. Alright, so yeah, once again, attack, can play the Fear, discard a land. And Braids isn't bad either, since we have some types that our opponent doesn't have to guarantee additional damage. So yeah, I guess we'll start by attacking, see what's up. Opponent's at 6. So I think I still prefer Alicia over Braids. And get back Hex Mage, put enchantment on a 1/1. So opponent needs to stabilize here by reanimating an Atraxa, for instance. There's Zombify. Alright, opponent's still missing a 4th line perhaps, so they couldn't quite get there. Even if they find removal for one of my creatures, they still seem pretty dead. Valgavoth's Faithful is going to be a little too slow. So yeah, opponent just kind of struggled to hit their land drops here. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw. Our hand's pretty underwhelming. Percussionist, enable Goblin, and that's about it. I'll take a mulligan. This is better. So, want to keep probably Braids with Forge. Alicia is missing more creatures to go with it early. And we already have a bunch of 3-drops, so I'll try this. Facing the red deck. Alright, I'll keep Percussionist back, although don't have high hopes to actually stop the Heartfire hero. But if their play is turn to play a 2-drop, then we can prevent 1 damage. Alright, and there's a Challenger, so just gonna take 2. And I'll pass with nowhere to run available. Although there's a chance, if they have a Monstrous Rage, for instance, that they can still get the Challenger above the threshold. So now we maybe block Heartfire and see what their response is. Monstrous Rage. Alright, so now we can know where to run. And get a nice 2-for-1. And not take any damage. Alright, so could already play Braids. Or we could get the Forge going, so I don't have to sacrifice any of my real permanents. Although it's not like nowhere to run's going to be all that important going forward. Unless your opponent is red-white after all. But from the looks of it, they're mono-red. So, yeah, I guess I don't hate Forge. The sooner the better. And Percussionists, I could still conceivably hang back to chump. Close call. I'll get in. Swift Spear. And another Monstrous Rage, so blocking wouldn't have worked out too well. But they did find a land with Valiance, which is what they were looking for. So yeah, we're down to 7. And this turn, I imagine we attack with a Forge token, play Braids. Probably should have played Sulphur Springs last turn, so I could have played a tapped Vents right now. Although we could still top deck Torch the Tower, I suppose. Well, we actually did, so that's lucky. Do I go for it now? Opponent could still have a 1-mana instant up. But if we let them untap, they're even more likely to have them. So I think I kind of like torching now. And then at least the Prowess trigger doesn't deal additional damage. Alright, that worked. Hex Mage I could keep. Sure, it's just more power and toughness we can throw onto the battlefield. Still gonna be in trouble if they have Screaming Nemesis here. And yep, speak of the devil. So I could chump it with the Percussionists and then only take 1 damage this turn. Not that we have any life gain in the deck. Percussionist will exile the Hex Mage, and then we can hope to top deck a clean answer to the Nemesis. Feels like if I take 3, there's too many combinations that kill me next turn. Wow, actually found the Final Vengeance, so that's lucky. So this turn, I guess I still have to decide if I want to take 1 damage of Sulphur Springs to play the Hex Mage, but we could empty out our hand. Yeah, so let's start by attacking. Opponent takes it. Difference between 5 life and 4 life isn't huge, unless they have two damage effects. But I think it's still worth it to get the extra bodies in play. So Hex Mage can enchant itself as well. Vengeance sacking the enchantment, removing the Nemesis. And then Braids can sack the Horror token. Alright, let's see if we're dead. We had some fortunate top decks along the way. Sulphur Springs cost us a couple points. And Lightning Strike puts us to 1. So it looks like the 1 extra point didn't matter. Double Lightning Strike. That's game. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw with a keepable hand. Got a good 1-2-3 curve. Facing turn 1 Swamp. Black-green. Even if they have some hand disruption, we have multiple good turn 2 plays. Start by attacking again. Sadly, don't have a creature to discard to the fear of missing out to set up Alicia, but I still like playing it here, just so we have more ways to enable raid next turn if needed. And then a land can go. Ooh, Anoint, that's painful since that exiles our fear of missing out, so no getting it back with Alicia. So, that's too bad. Can keep attacking, and then... Yeah, it's awkward if we Mirth sacking Percussionist, because then I no longer have a raid enabler. Opponent's gonna exile Percussionist as well. So now I have nothing left. Could play Mirth, play tap land, and then this does nothing, but next turn we can draw and manifest Dread. Yeah, I think that's still more realistic than just playing an Alicia without a graveyard. Aha, Rot Priest, so this is a poison deck. And a Communion. So we would love to exile the Rot Priest. There's a few ways we can do that with our deck. And didn't quite find it. So just play a Goblin this turn. Maybe should have actually let this one go to the graveyard to set up Alicia to get something more exciting back. Although Artifact and Creature is better for Delirium. And Drown in Ichor, proliferates. Second removal spell would be painful. It's going to be a Siphoner instead. So we can hold off the Rot Priest, and we found Torch. So now if we exile it, they don't even get it back, they just get one trigger. Which is fine by me. So 2/2 attacks. Gets back another Goblin with Raid. So that should be fine. And then I'll even sack Disturbing Mirth just to get another Manifest Dread. Bottom of the land. Okay. So we're in decent shape. Opponent's down to 2 cards in hand. We're still only at 3 poison. Alright, Contaminator was a good one. But Final Vengeance was a good top deck. So can sack the Forge here. Or do we? Because I could get the Goblin back, but if I flip it face up, I also get an extra 1/1 token. Although I can also get in with a Restless Vents, which is maybe still better. So yeah, in that case, I'll just get rid of the Seer Slicer, so we can return that with Alicia. And then Vents can attack. Probably discarding Swamp, in case we draw a 1-mana removal spell, so I can cast both with the Springs. Although maybe could have played Swamp and kept the Verge untapped. Okay. And then while empty-handed, Fear of Missing Out just draws us a card. So it's not a bad leftover. Alright, and that'll do it. Awesome. So we get to see our Rakdos Sacrifice deck in action, and the deck has a lot of interesting synergies, especially like the one with Fear of Missing Out and Urbrask's Forge, but we also get to see a lot of synergy with Alicia and some of the other sacrifice effects. So yeah, definitely a deck I enjoy playing. It's not the best when facing some of the bigger decks like the various domain strategies or other decks packing Sunfall, so those will always be an uphill battle. Against aggro, we should be okay as long as we draw our cheap interaction. So it's good game against most strategies and always feels like you've got a chance. So that's going to do it for today's gameplay. Want to thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed, and as always, have a nice day.